This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets. Oil prices settled more than $1 a barrel higher on Friday, notching their biggest weekly gain since October, as the US dollar dropped to a 7-month low and more indicators pointed toward growing demand from top oil importer China. Brent crude futures settled at $85.28 a barrel, up by $1.25, or 1.5%. West Texas Intermediate, WTI, crude futures rose for the 7th straight session to settle at $79.86 a barrel, up by $1.47, or 1.9%. Brent gained 8.6% this week, while WTI rose by 8.4%, recouping most of the previous week's losses.
At least 4 Chinese-owned supertankers are shipping Russian Urals crude to China, according to trading sources and tracking data, as Moscow seeks vessels for exports after a G7 oil price cap restricted the use of Western cargo services and insurance. China, the world's top oil importer, has continued buying Russian oil despite Western sanctions, after Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese leader Xi Jinping launched what they called a no-limit partnership before the war in Ukraine. The sources said a 5th supertanker, or Very Large Crude Carrier, VLCC, was shipping crude to India, which like China has continued buying Russian oil sold at a discount as many Western buyers turn to other suppliers.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
China's crude oil imports fell for the second year in a row in 2022 despite a burst of purchases in the fourth quarter, as the country's strict COVID-19 control measures hobbled the economy and fuel demand. Imports for the full year by the world's top buyer totaled 508.28 million tons, equivalent to 10.17 million barrels per day, 0.9% lower than in 2021, according to data from the General Administration of Customs. That followed a drop in 2021, which was China's first annual oil import decline in 2 decades. Imports in 2020 hit a record high of 10.8 million barrels of oil per day.
Sales of marine fuel in Singapore, including sales of liquefied natural gas and biofuels, fell 4.3% year-on-year to 47.9 million tons in 2022, official data showed on Friday. Total bunker sales in the world's largest bunkering hub eased as macroeconomic headwinds weighed on overall ship refueling demand in Singapore, industry sources said. Bunkering sales of low-sulfur fuel oils, LSFO, were down 8.3% from the previous year to 30.1 million tons in 2022, Reuters calculations based on data from the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, MPA, showed.
Next, we have the top news in metal markets.
India will seek an easing of European Union steel import quotas and tariffs in talks for a new trade deal as Indian steelmakers struggle to sell the alloy in one of world's big markets, a senior government official said. Last year, India and the EU relaunched negotiations for a free trade agreement with the aim of completing talks by the end of 2023. The two sides previously launched talks in 2007, but they were frozen in 2013 due to a lack of progress. India is likely to take up the issue of EU steel import quota and their high tariffs during the free trade negotiations, said the official with direct knowledge of the matter. The official declined to be named as India's plan to take up the issue with the EU is confidential.
Copper prices paused their rally on Friday but were set to end the week with a 7% gain thanks to a weaker dollar and hopes that China's dismantling of COVID-19 restrictions will lift demand. Other industrial metals were also on course for hefty weekly gains, with aluminium, zinc and tin up by between 10% and 14% from last Friday. Benchmark copper was roughly unchanged on the day at $9,190.50 a ton by 1700 GMT, retreating from Thursday's 7-month high of $9,240. We will now look at the top news in the agricultural. China approved imports of 8 genetically modified, GM, crops, permitting shipments of GM alfalfa for the first time after a decade-long wait, the country's agriculture ministry said on Friday. Global seed makers and the U.S. government welcomed the decision after Beijing's slow approval process disrupted grain exports and launches of crops that need clearance from China because it is one of the world's biggest agriculture markets. The approvals are a positive step towards resolving the long-standing challenges biotechnology developers face in obtaining import approvals in China, said the Biotechnology Innovation Organization in Washington, the world's largest trade association for biotech companies like Bayer Ag.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.